Hey, Shepherd family. This is Pastor Scott Seidler. And now that the Being Challenged Bible studies are coming to an end here in the months of September and October at Shepherd, I finally get the opportunity, a little wind underneath my sails, in order to get back to our Shepherd podcast. And what better way to start the restart of our Shepherd podcast than with Kathy Bauer, a Shepherd congregation member with whom we began podcasting way back in the late spring, early summer. Kathy, welcome back to the Shepherd podcast. I'm so grateful to have you, your caring heart, and your counselor's wisdom.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Hey, we're going to be talking today about care and caring for the souls of ourselves individually and the ones we love as we make our way through this holiday season. You know, COVID presents and has presented a lot of opportunity to learn new things about who we are and how we care for people. But the holiday season adds an extra level of stress. And so, Kathy, as we gather today, you know, what are you thinking? What have you been watching and observing through this COVID pandemic, especially when it comes to self-care and emotional well-being?
Yeah, I never would have dreamed 8 months ago when this began that we would still be in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. And, it makes you realize that we are not in control of things, but we have an opportunity to monitor and adjust our lives accordingly. And you have done a wonderful job of allowing people to stay connected with church through streaming. And I appreciate that so much. And I know my mom does too. So I'm seeing a lot of things. Number one, this has been very, very stressful on the last 8 months on everyone. But with the upcoming holidays, it adds another layer of stress for everyone. Sometimes you hear people talk about holiday blues, and that's kind of a typical thing that many people deal with every year. Because we remember our loved ones, or we remember past holidays, and many people are grieving right now.
Yeah.
So, and we're grieving a lot of different things, not necessarily the loss of a loved one, but the loss of opportunities to get together and to do what we normally love to do. So we've had to make a lot of changes in how we've addressed our daily lives in so many different ways.
You know, I'm not a counselor like you. I'm not a social worker or a licensed marriage and family therapist, but I do know a little bit about Sigmund Freud. He's my friend. I call him Sig for short. And this weekend, we're going to start a new message series here at Shepherd called November is for Thanksgiving. Not just the holiday, but an invitation in the midst of this pandemic to find reasons to say thank you, to show gratitude. And one of the things that I was studying was this whole idea of anxiety and angst. And Freud said that there are three sources, as he identifies them at least, three sources of anxiety or angst for the human soul. One is a real threat, physical violence that's staring us down. Another would be a moral threat where our values are being contested. And thirdly and finally, there is the threat that is purposeful. That is, the purposes for which we live, the aspirations that we have, the deep desires of our human heart, when they are stymied. Those three kinds of antagonism bring us anxiety or angst. And the idea behind it is, you know, we are living in a moment right now where all three of those sources of anxiety are in play. We've got an election in play where there are a lot of moral questions that are being contested. We are living in a society where there is a lot of violence and civil unrest, and so there's mortal threat to us. And then finally, we're trying to figure out, will I still have a job? How am I going to continue my retirement? all of these aspirational things that are in front of us, they're threatened as well. So we've got a lot of reason, according to Freud, to be anxious, don't we? And how do
Yes.
you advise people just to deal with that anxiety? Let's start just by talking about adults who are probably listening to this podcast, and then we'll toggle over to the children's side of mental health, like we were doing earlier in the summer in our first podcast together. So, what do you do with adults facing those kind of triple threat anxiety?
Yeah. Well, first of all, even adults and kids, we're used to thriving on a routine, and any change can be difficult. But especially, like you said, with the election coming up, and we don't know what that's going to look like, and the aftermath, perhaps, of the election. Um, Again, the holidays, planning for change there. It is so important that adults take care of themselves first, because believe it or not, and whether we like it or not, our kids are feeding off of adults,
Right.
any adult in their life. But so I always tell parents, if you're not caring for yourself first and being a good role model for your kids
Mm.
with your physical health, your emotional health, and your spiritual health, then your kids are going to feed off that, whether it be positively or negatively. So the first thing you need to do is take care of yourself. And we all get back to, I use the acronym DEAR, DEER, that you have to be drinking enough fluids, and hopefully the right kind of fluids, and eating right,
Right.
and exercising, and
Yeah.
the R stands for rest. If you're not getting enough of those, and trying to be healthy with just those physical things, that can wreak havoc on your health.
Right.
Um, Emotionally, there are a lot of things that we can do. I use the 5-step symbol, I guess. If you take 5 deep breaths just to refocus and get in the present, and then you look around after your 5 deep breaths, use your 5 senses and identify 5 things that you can see around you,
Mm.
and 4 things that you can touch. You can just look around. 3 things that you can feel. I'm sorry, 3 things that you can hear. I'm sorry.
No
3 things
worries.
that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste.
Right.
So those are the 5 things that I use to ground myself after the deep breathing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's also, I tell people about the Glasser's theory again, about how to change. If you're feeling depressed or moody, if you want to get out of that rut that you're in, stinking thinking type of thing, change what you're thinking about and change what you're doing. And those are the front wheels of your car. And your back wheels are going to follow. And your back wheels are how you feel, your physiology, and your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Mm-hmm.
you want to change how you're feeling about things, you've got to change what you're thinking about and what you're doing.
Sure. Well, it reminds me as you talk about routines and these, simple everyday things that impact our well-being when routines are disrupted. I know that holidays involve special routines, right? We go to grandmother's house. She makes the non-alcoholic champagne salad in my family, as a, for instance. There's the turkey gravy. Our routines in the holidays are special. They are emotionally thick. They are sacred. They're holy. That's what makes holy days, holy days, holy days, holy days. Is there any advice on how to navigate these one-off kinds of routines that are maybe only once or twice a year celebrated, but yet they are as important, in some ways more important than just getting up, brushing our teeth, flossing our gums, and heading out the door to work? How do you deal with the special routines that are being interrupted because of this pandemic, loved ones not being able to travel, so on and so forth?
Mhm. Well, first of all, we need to realize that things are probably going to be different. And if you plan ahead for that, that's the best way to kind of prepare some coping strategies.
Mm,
Things don't have to be perfect. We
right.
don't have to obsess over everything being perfect at Christmas or Thanksgiving, but we
Sure.
need to think about what is most important to you and your family, and maybe talk about it as a family. I know
Hmm.
I have with my mom and my sister, and we've decided that we're not going to have 30 people at my house for Thanksgiving this year. We're
Right.
just not going to do that. So
Hmm.
we talked about what we wanted to do, and we made some alternative plans, and it's going to be okay. We need to be okay with change, and we need to plan ahead and decide what we're going to do. And
Yeah.
I think talking with your kids about that ahead of time, I think that's important for them to be in the know and not to be disappointed at the last minute, but maybe have them help you with your plans.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we here at Shepherd, we studied a book last January and February called "Change Anything." And as you were talking, it reminds me that being in an anticipating position toward what is ahead, not being reactive, so important. And to be able to acquire those skills and abilities both personally and with maybe our siblings, especially if we're caring for aging parents who are so important, and each of these days we have with aging parents is precious time. But to anticipate and to acquire in advance the skills and abilities necessary to make lemonade out of lemons. And you cannot let yourself get into a reactive position. We are going to be broadcasting this podcast on, I think, Halloween, or maybe October 30th, on that Friday. And that gives you at least 20 some odd days before Thanksgiving, and another month beyond that before Christmas holidays arrive. So, having that those advanced directives, so to speak. How about this for an analogy? You'll be able to resuscitate the holidays
Mhm.
for yourself. That's what we hope for. So, good advice. What about, let's turn to the kid side of things. What about kids? You've talked about, being healthy and making sure you're guarding your own adult well-being. But is there anything parents can specifically do for kids beyond the deer, beyond the breathe, sight, sound, taste, smell, hearing kind of approach that you talked about before?
Yes, absolutely. We talked about how we're creatures of habit and we all need to be in a routine, and kids need that too. And this has been very, very difficult on kids, not being at school, being away from their peers. And I know many kids are getting back to school now, which is a good thing. And I know that that can be a stress on, parents worrying about their kids maybe being exposed to the virus.
Sure.
But it's important that we keep things in perspective and that we are monitoring our kids. That
Mm,
doesn't mean necessarily hovering over them, but to just know how much
yeah.
screen time are they getting every day. If they're
Right.
on the computer for both school and maybe gaming and whatever, that might be too much screen time. So
Mm,
monitor that a little bit and balance it with some exercise.
yeah.
That's what I suggest. And that's kind of a rule that I give myself. I don't like
Mm,
to be sitting for more than an hour doing anything, whether it's
right.
Bible study or whatever I'm working on.
Sure.
but getting up and having some movement and having some balance. Go for a walk with your kids. That's a great
Yeah.
time to connect with them and talk to them and be goofy with your kids. It's okay to have fun and play games, but just do
Right.
check-ins with your kids. If you are seeing extra irritability or moodiness or not being plugged in, not wanting to get up and participate in school activities, then that's a red flag. So
Right.
we need to check in with our kids and help them stay in balance as we are trying to do.
Yeah, good for you. And I think too, I've got a 14-year-old, almost 14-year-old in my house, and I know that my quickest antidote to any irritability involves food. If after fooding, which is a verb, by the way, after fooding him, I just throw food in his way, just anything that you can consume, eat this. If after fooding him, he is still irritable, then I assume there may be something deeper going on here. So, again, it's the holidays are great because we have the opportunity to food our kids to their heart's content. Always hoping, that it's not just simple carbohydrates that go through and sugar them up quick and then big letdown. But yeah, the idea of making sure that we're checking in, it's really, really critical. I'm reminded also that holidays are a time where if we've lost loved ones, if not this year, then maybe in years past, we grieve. We grieve the empty space at the table, at Thanksgiving, at Christmas. You do, as part of your leadership here at Shepherd of the Desert, you lead a grief support group, GriefShare. And this is, again, holidays are always tough for grieving people. COVID makes it even worse. What are you learning through the GriefShare organization, the GriefShare program, about holiday tips and pointers that you could share with us in this podcast?
Well, staying connected is probably the number one thing. Grieving people, especially if it's your spouse that's in an older, in our older population, that is so devastating. It's life changing to lose someone you love, and staying connected is so important. And part of the 13-week GriefShare program that I run, it's not a cure after 13 weeks. You're not going to be over your grieving process. And
Right.
many of my people actually sign up again so that they can continue to have access to the videos that we send out links to. But one of the things that at the end of this 13 weeks is a challenge for even those who are grieving to reach out and help someone else, because helping others is in itself a huge healing, part of your healing.
Right.
So all of us need to check on our neighbors. We don't know how many of our neighbors have actually lost their job or are seeking a job or are in financial troubles right now, or those who are grieving the loss of a loved one. Sometimes we don't even know who our neighbors are, but if you can connect with people and reach out and decide, who can I be a blessing to this holiday season? That in itself is something that we can do to help ourselves feel better.
Yeah, that's awesome. And hey, just as you listen, if you're a guest of our podcast and listening in, here at Shepherd, our digital ministry is only increasing in depth and breadth of options. And so if you can make it out to church, if you are one of those older adults who hardly goes out for food to the grocery store, you can always check in or have your mom or dad, grandparents, aunts, uncles check in on our Shepherd website, we're going to be having some amazing spiritual food for your soul over the course of the next couple months. You know, Kathy, you said something that I think is really important, and that is, we create solutions for our grief, for the disruption in our holiday routines. I think it's important also to say that the solution you choose today may not be the solution that's right for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
The solution that works on Thanksgiving is not necessarily the solution that will also work on Christmas. And so to use this as a learning opportunity and a reflection opportunity with siblings, your spouse, maybe even your older kids about, okay, Thanksgiving was decent, but Christmas is still going to be under the cloud of COVID. And so, what can we do to make Christmas better? In other words, turn the antagonism of this season against itself. If Thanksgiving did not meet your expectations, what can we do? Let's collaborate. Let's find ways to create new traditions, new routines, new opportunities so that Christmas can be better than Thanksgiving and better than we thought possible given the circumstances that are here.
Yes. Yes. We've got to be flexible. We've got to be able to make some changes. It doesn't mean that this Christmas is going to be horrible or that Thanksgiving would be horrible, but if you plan ahead and be flexible and give each other grace and just love on each other and remember what this is for. So
awesome. Well, and underneath all of this, there is worldly manipulation of the situation. And then there is the divine intervention. And that's really what we pray for. It's one thing, and so grateful, Kathy, for your wisdom and experience in just the simple human things we can do in order to make this unbelievably novel but not nice season work in our favor. But I'm also reminded of that passage of Scripture, Jesus speaking, "My peace I leave you, my peace I give to you. I do not give as the world gives. Let not your heart be troubled. Do not be afraid." And that idea that, through all of this, there is a very spiritual part of this reality that, while antagonized, still has a solution that God himself is the author of. And so, as you have the opportunity, again, connecting into our Shepherd ministry, if you're watching, listening to this podcast, that you would find ways to seek and find and experience that peace that the world cannot give. I'm grateful for the Kathys and the counselors of this world that help us figure it out. I'm also thankful for the Word of God that gives us a deeper understanding of the peace that we need in this very trying season. Well, Kathy, thank you so much for being with us. Any final words as we think about the resources we need or the help that is out there as we make our way through this particular season?
Yes. I want to make everybody aware, you may or may not know, that if you dial 211, it is a community resource here in Arizona that will connect you with a person who can guide you and direct you into getting help with housing, utilities, if you need food. They offer free crisis counseling. It is an amazing resource, just one number to call. Or you can even get online to www.211arizona.org. And you will see everything on their website. But there are a lot of resources out there. So don't be afraid. If you are needing help or advice or needing a sense of direction, they can direct you to anything that you might need.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate that, Kathy. And, it is mental health is never anything to be taken for granted, but certainly during this season. Your Shepherd family is here for you. And if you're listening to this podcast, you are part of our Shepherd family. Don't hesitate to reach out through our website at shepherdaz.church. And as you have opportunity to do that, to avail yourself of the other resources digitally that are there. If you live here in Scottsdale or Phoenix, we would love to have you on site, especially as we look forward to our Christmas Eve service at 4 o'clock in the afternoon out on our Shea parking lot. It's going to be an outdoor service, not Cool in the Gang or Chicago, but we'll have a pretty awesome band of brass and modern instruments singing Christmas carols, having a wonderful message of encouragement and inspiration, an opportunity for us to get together and remember the reason for the Christmas season specifically, but for the holidays, generally speaking. As you have opportunity, make sure that you support financially our Shepherd family as well. We want to continue to make these digital resources available and to do so in expanding ways over time. Any amount that you give goes directly to our Shepherd ministry and the support of it. Thank you so much in advance for considering. Well, Kathy, thank you so much. Say hi to your mom. We'll look forward to seeing you again shortly. Maybe after the holidays, we'll have another follow-up conversation just to check in, see what we need to do in terms of the post-holiday weight gain, which is sure to come. I look forward to it, Kathy. I'm grateful for your participation and partnership in the gospel.
Thank you.
You bet. Shepherd family, thanks so much again for joining us. This is Pastor Scott Seidler, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.